Hi again, everybody, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about tactics today. So, in particular, I wanted to talk a little bit about the three at the back setup that we have here. So, a couple of days ago, when I was thinking about what we could do for a new tactic for Ponce East FC, I knew that one of the problems that we had was that we're giving up far too many goals. It might be a little bit surprising for some of you to hear that I decided to go with a three at the back setup to try to increase our defensive posture as opposed to having four, because you think, well, there's one person that you're missing. The reason why I did this, though, is because I wanted to make sure that we had enough of a defense here to deal with any sort of potential, not just a second striker, but maybe even a third attack, some sort of attacking midfielder or something like that the opposition might throw over at us, which is the chief reason why we've decided to go with a three at the back setup. Now, there's a disadvantage to doing that I've read a lot about. You can read about too when you search things for Football Manager tactics. The disadvantage with this setup is that you're using an extra player here to play a center back, which sometimes is wasted, especially if your opposition only has a single striker. And so it's kind of a trade-off that you made. When I made the decision, though, I thought we really need to have a little bit more defensive support here in the back to try to avoid giving up a excess number of goals. Now, I would say this is not really a hard and fast rule, but I've had a hard time. I've never seen this work otherwise. I would say that what you really need to do if you have three in the back is you need to have wing backs there on both sides, right? We could theoretically, if we were going to create a new tactic and call it, I don't know, like a tiki-taka, and choose a formation, we'll just choose the default here. Here we go. We'll choose one of these. If we wanted to, with a secondary formation, we could theoretically have this. We could put up, so we'll have, these guys here in the center again, whatever. We could theoretically have a setup where we have these players playing a little bit up higher and playing, instead of playing on a, wide midfielder role, have them play as defensive wingers. In fact, you could even have them play on a defensive duty where they try to provide a little bit more support for the people behind them. You could also theoretically have these two players play high and instead have them on some sort of duty that allows them to come back a little bit more just in case it's needed. So, I'm trying to think here exactly what you could do. Perhaps sort of like a wide target forward or just a normal winger duty, and then hope that you have somebody who can go all the way back to try to help out on defense. But the problem that you have here, if you try that type of approach, as you can see, is that you're giving up so much space here on the flanks that a team with attacking midfielders is going to be able to get behind you pretty easily. That is the reason why we decided to go with these wing backs. Again, you could theoretically have a guy play up here instead. I prefer, though, to have them play wing back. I'm not sure why Lee Mao is their wing back. We've got to go ahead and fix this. There we go. Because that made no sense. But that's the reason why we have these two guys here on the side. Now, one of the other questions that'll come up is exactly how do you set this up with three guys in the back, right? Do you have them all with the exact same duty, exact same idea, or do you have them do something different? So I'll show you here sort of what I've found as I've looked things up over time. We'll go ahead and take a look at this. I'll bring this page up here for you in a second. There are a couple of different places you can look to come up with ideas for how to handle your tactics. I'll show you a couple of them here. We'll go here first to a view from the touchline. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can actually see. View from the touchline is one of my favorite blogs, and I love it in particular because of the work of Cleon Hobson. Cleon's work is very, very good. His writing is good. I can see that this is going to continually move back to 150%. We want this to be around 200%, so you can see it. The work by him that I relied on a lot when I was trying to think about this and trying to figure out what was going on is this here on his 5221, his comprehensive guide, which is actually, I would say, 2 blog posts in one. And so he goes into detail here about an early version of this tactic that looks a little bit similar to what we're doing that we have. We'll talk about our defensive midfielders maybe in a different video. The difference, though, is that he's got a different setup in the back. He's got a central defender playing on the cover role, ball-playing defender over here on a ST stands for a stopper role to move a little bit up further. And then he's got a wide center back who offers a little bit of offensive support. And he's got a central midfielder on defensive role. I tried this once. I'm trying to remember if that was with the Ingolstadt save. I think that may have been where it was. And came up with a team that could dominate possession and couldn't score goals. It's a little bit better to have something that's got a little bit more attack to it. So his second example right here is the one that I favor a little bit more, where there's a little bit more oomph, a little bit more of a focus on trying to score goals, and it's got a more positive mentality. Even still, since he only has one player here with an actual attacking role, which can make things a little bit difficult. We would rather have these 1, 2, 3 that we have, and then a whole bunch of guys playing in a support role, and then a number of players here with with a defense role and the sweeper keeper. So that's one way of looking at this. I definitely recommend taking a look at view from the touchline to give you a lot of insight into what can happen and what can work. And there's a lot that Cleon has written here about sort of the thought that goes into it. Another place to look, of course, is here on the Sports Interactive forums. I would recommend going over here to the Tactics, Training, and Strategies discussion page. There's a lot of good information here. There's some information here that might not quite be as good. We'll talk about some of the things I found here as we move along. There's some other things that I haven't had time to look over, or that we might have to take a little while before we can talk about it. But first of all, what I'm going to show you here is the most famous part of this, which are the KNAP tactics. These are probably the most famous of the shared tactics because they work extraordinarily well. And we can go over here, look at, this is as of the filming of this video, which is in late July 2023. I usually film these a little bit before they are released. We can look and see what the formations are. Now, we've got, 3 in the back, so we're going to want to be looking at anything that starts with a 3. And I'll tell you, we'll only look at a couple of these, but you'll start noticing pretty quickly what the pattern is. And so what you see here, for example, for this particular tactic, this is what the Argus test with Arsenal. We have 2 ball-playing defenders in the back and a central defender in the middle, all on that defense duty. There's some other things that you'll notice here. This is very, very small, I know. It's going to be a little bit hard for you to see. But when you look here where it says out of possession down under here, he's got a high press, which is similar to what we have. He's got things like much more often and prevent the short goalkeeper distribution. He doesn't have, in this particular tactic, that higher defensive line that we do have. We saw in the match earlier today that higher defensive line can hurt you, right? So it's something to keep in mind when you're making your own tactic. Now, of course, this isn't the only example of this. We can go through these slowly, and we can even go through these almost systematically. Here's another one that he has, another Argus tactic, and this one has 3 ball-playing defenders. And what do you see here? Much higher defensive line. This is very similar to what we had in the end. This is an interesting tactic because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players in midfield with 2 advanced forwards and nobody playing up here in this role. But as you can see here, it works pretty well. Now, I will warn you, KNAP will use a lot of individual options, a lot of stuff that will try to take advantage of things in the game that may not be extraordinarily well balanced. So be careful when you're using this, right? You're not necessarily going to be able to use this tactic from one version to another, but if you follow along with some of the patterns in these tactics, as I've seen in my own save, you can learn a lot about how this works, and you can come up with something that might end up doing very well for you. Here's another Argus tactic, 1, 2, 3 at the back, which is what we're looking for, and they're all ball-playing defenders on defense. The other thing that we're seeing that I haven't talked about a lot is that you have a sweeper keeper on defense. Sweeper keeper will work very well, especially if you have a much higher defensive line. There's a reason why it works well, right? It works well, and it works well sort of from a theoretical perspective when you're thinking about the game, because you have your defenders playing up a little bit higher, and then you want your keeper to be able to go over and grab the ball and get it out of the danger area as quick as possible. Here's another Argus tactic. Once again, 3 ball-playing defenders in the back. I spent some time, I looked over probably about, maybe 40 or so tactics, including ones from KNAP, including ones that were shared on FM Scout, and ones I could find on other websites. And I've noticed over and over and over again that you usually have the 3 ball-playing defender roles in the back on the defense duty. The other thing I've noticed over and over again with these 3 at the back tactics is that usually they are going to be flanked by wingbacks, right? Not by midfielders up here. This is kind of an odd one, right, with the 2 forwards and then with the shadow striker here on the side, and a Segundo Volante who's playing up a little bit higher than normal. That's going to be a tactic with a lot of offensive power to it, man. And anyway, sort of thing to keep in mind. There's a lot of interesting things that go on. We'll take another quick look at some of these. I'm going to see if I can find anything that's an unusual formation. Let's see here. Sometimes this happens where the link is not to a tactic that is recognizable. I'll take another look at this here again. This will happen to you from time to time, right? Let's see if we can actually find where this tactic went on this page. That's the 3412. That's the one that we just looked at. And so this link took me nowhere, and here it is. So here's the first example that we've seen of this. You see 3 ball-playing defenders on the defensive role with the sweeper keeper on support again. And what we see here is similar to what we have, except they have 2 of these attacking wingers instead of having 2 wingbacks. And so it sort of depends upon your style, right? I would guess that this style would be okay, right? But it probably gives up a lot more goals than it really should. I mean, he won the league with Manchester City, right? But he says right here, it plays well, 4-0 win against Real Madrid, and he's improving. And there you have it. So that's sort of an example of what you can do and the sort of things that you can look up. I definitely do recommend, as you are going through this yourself and as you're trying to figure out what tactic works and what sort of setup you want, I definitely recommend looking at the work that other people do. That doesn't mean that you have to go through and like copy off of it directly, right? You want to make sure that you've got something that is your own. But at the same time, I would definitely recommend taking a little bit of time looking at what other people do and looking for those patterns that will show you what combinations tend to work together and what combinations that are possible or feasible might not work so well. And then once you have something you think works, put it together, try to make it happen, see if it fits your team. And if it doesn't, change it up a little bit and try to make it fit your team a little bit better. That's it for me today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.